Good afternoon, friends. We come to a topic which I think is extremely important but equally complex. And so many times the answers become only politically correct, and we sometimes try to sweep things under the carpet. We'll try and see that if we can get something out today which can become at least good knowledge for all of us. So my first question, sir, to all of you is, how important is the CAPEX, that is the capital expenditure that you do for setting up a hospital? You keep getting various figures that are you spending 70 lakhs of rupees or 1 crore of rupee or 80 lakhs of rupees for a tertiary care bed, or what price for a secondary care bed? So first of all, how important it is that what money are you spending for your ultimate OPEX or the P&L later on? Is it important, or you can go ahead and spend to your heart's content, make a world-class hospital? How really important it is to have any control on that? So the answer is from all of you.
Thank you. Interesting question, which is a hot topic considering some of the demands on the healthcare system. You have typically touted figures that if you look at the cost of creation of a bed in a metropolitan city or tier 2 city, that about 30 to 40% would go on building, another 30-40% would go on the technology, and another 20% would go to the other aspects of setting up a hospital. But surprisingly, there's one aspect of this which is not touched at all, and I think is integral to quality in a healthcare institute. Nobody talks about people in terms of CAPEX. If you look at the balance sheets, if you look at the P&Ls, it is not about the infrastructure or technology alone. It is all about the people. If you look at people in a P&L, it is an expenditure, which still mystifies me because people are your greatest asset, and it is the single one appreciating asset in what you spend. But still it sits in the P&L as an expenditure, which is absolutely critical in delivering quality in outcomes. It is not just the infrastructure, it is not just the technology. There are enough hospitals which you see languishing by the wayside with fantastic infrastructure and technology because they just got it wrong. They thought that this expenditure is what drives everything. So I am not a believer in CAPEX driving quality exclusively.
Dr. Ramnarayan, I think, let me just, I think, sir, still let it be with him, because let me rephrase my question. You see, people are going to be important, and that will be probably next part of our some question and discussion. I am saying that when you erect a hospital, you are requiring an infrastructure, you require a building, so other than the cost of the land, which of course can be anywhere and will vary, but to create the infrastructure that will require your building and that will require whether technology, how you are even equipping it, there is a variable amount of expenditure that you may do. And I'm saying, do you want to have a look at, do you want to control it, or you want to say that, no, you should spend the maximum and maybe it has some relation to the...
You should absolutely control it. If you look at the current expenditures, some of them are not, shall we say, logical or rational. There is definitely a role to control the cost of creation of a bed in infrastructure and technology. You have models where they are aggressively containing the cost of creation of a bed because it directly impacts the operational expenditure, it directly impacts your EBITDA, it directly impacts everything else. And it's a question of, when you say control, it is not about what you want to create or what is sold to you. It is about what you need to deliver what you aim to deliver. And that is the big question.
Yeah. So in your vast experience, all right, sir. I think you please answer Dr. Chatterjee maybe the same question, then we can.
At the outset, of course, as Rama said, that CAPEX is extremely important. But also, you've got to understand that what is the community that you're serving? So you need to understand that whether you're going to go beyond a certain level or you're not going to go beyond a certain level. And that will be directly impacting your costs. So if you want to be a tertiary, quaternary care hospital with the full gamut of radiation oncology along with nuclear medicine and advanced technologies, then obviously the cost is going to be higher. So therefore, this is what you need to understand as the first. So that means you have to, at the planning stage, be extremely clear that this is where I'm going. Always remember that there has to be, at the time of construction, your operational, what you're going to be doing operationally has to be extremely well thought of and in detail. Well, that might require a certain amount of additional expenditure, and putting a ballpark figure that you will not recover your money if your bed and cost, that is you spend 1 crore per bed, is not the logical way to go about doing things. Because if you have very high-end facilities and the type of care that you will give, obviously there will be a charge to it. So therefore, to that level, you will recover your money. But it is extremely important that you understand that this is the level of service that I'm going to be rendering. There will be a scope of expansion in which I will require additional money. So therefore, I decide to go up to this amount, 1 lakh per bed. I may do 50 lakhs, 75 lakhs, or up to 1 crore. That being said, also, safety mechanisms within your project can never be ignored. And this should be at the outset, not while you have operationalized the hospital. So therefore, all these will impact your costs. So therefore, sir, to answer this question, it is important to control the capex, and it is very important to understand philosophically what you're going to do, and that's where you go to the drawing board, and then you put your project together, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right.
So I would like to echo my thoughts along the similar lines as Dr. Chatterjee. I think it's not a matter of how much capex you have and then going about setting up the hospital. One has to need a very clear thought and a roadmap on what you want to do, what are the services, what is the sector you're looking after, and how are you going to go about it. And we also need to have a roadmap for the next few years and probably getting your capex in a staggered manner. The capex has to service the requirement rather than capex and the equipments which you have becoming a kind of selling point for the hospital, as in I have this and I have that. The minute we get into that kind of zone and we invest in capex because you want to be there as a hospital which has XYZ, you could well set up yourself for financial disaster. So I would say, one, think it out. At the outset, you need to be very clear. Not everything which you want to deliver requires a capex. And when we keep talking about capex, I think a significant thought needs to be given not just to the equipment, but the infrastructure. How do you develop it in terms of your day-to-day operational costs? The right infrastructure, the flow of work, the kind of setup you have makes a lot of difference there as well. So it's a clear thought on what you want to do, and a staggered approach to investing in your capex, and at every step kind of calibrating to see where you are, how well you are utilizing it, is my view.
So thank you. I think, friends, we have got, I think, at least 2-3 very clear-cut guidelines from these learned speakers. The guidelines are, number one, you should know your business case or your service profile. Please do that in-depth study before you start even thinking of investing money in your capex. And second thing is that definitely the amount of money that you will spend naturally relates to all that, and therefore it does affect your ultimate profit and loss. So you need to have a very close watch on this particular expenditure that you are doing. Still, I would say, because what happens that sometimes when you're sitting in these kind of, this thing, and like what Dr. Chatterjee said, although the ultimate capex will depend upon, are you going in for nuclear medicine with advanced radiotherapy, with advanced kind of various things. So there, whether you are spending about ₹1 crore per bed, but a person who is listening and when he says, right, you are spending ₹1 crore for a tertiary care hospital, and he starts to plan a hospital, he thinks, and I've heard, all right, this much amount of expenditure is okay. So I'm trying to now, let's say, out of your vast experience, for a secondary care hospital, leave aside the cost of the bed. We're not talking about anything very, very high fancy. We're all routine kind of, let's say, modalities like a CT and MRI being there, and other things. What should be the approximate kind of a figure that one, I'm just trying to see if we can come out with a benchmark. Is it possible?
Typically for a secondary care, as you were saying, and leaving out some of the very high-end work, we would look at about, if we could capture it in about 60 lakhs per bed, 50 to 60 lakhs. It's a difficult call, but that may be the need of the hour going ahead if you're looking at secondary care. As Sujit said, as you ramp up, I mean, you can go up to 1, you can go to 1.1. But 50, 60, if possible lower, is what will be the need going forward.
Dr. Chatterjee.
So let me define this, sir. So therefore, if we are talking in terms of secondary level of care, then I think, to my mind, it is going to be medicine. And when I talk about medicine, I talk general medicine. You have general surgery. You will have pediatrics, obstetrics and gynecology, ENT, opthal, anesthesiology, dental surgery, and dermatology. This is what will give you a full complex as far as secondary level of care is concerned. But the point, sir, that I want to make is that where are you going to make this hospital? Now, if you're going to make it in hinterland, then I would think in terms of, well, even 1 bed to 30 lakhs with a CT which is refurbished, with an MRI which is refurbished would be equitable. So you want to set this up at a premium place and you want to keep at new equipment. You start a new hospital, I want new equipment. Then I think what Ram has said is absolutely the benchmark price. So you will be close to 1.5, 1.65, between 1.5 to 1.65 per bed. That was what is going to come as a secondary level of care in a metro. But this, there is no rule of thumb which will say that, you can drive it all across the landscape of India. You can't do that. So therefore, it has got to be clearly divided. Yes, in hinterland, it will be cheaper. But if these 9 specialities you're talking about, then this should be a very reasonable cost.
So I think he's said it. Depending on where you are setting up, depending on the specialities you're putting up.
I'm already saying excluding the cost of the land. So that's one area.
Yeah, so if you're putting it up in a larger city and you have a fairly advanced with all facilities in with diagnostics and everything in a secondary care hospital, would be about 50 to 60 lakhs, I would assume. But if you're setting up in a smaller, more remote place where you don't need top of the line equipments, you probably can do it for a little less.
Okay. So I think so we are getting some kind of a price line that we are looking at a good secondary level hospital at about 50 to 60 lakhs and slightly less in a smaller town, maybe around 40 lakhs. So probably what we have to now do is to try and see across the country of the new startups or new hospitals which have come up, maybe interact with them and to come out with what kind of facilities they have created and what kind of expenditure has been made so as to kind of create a guideline and benchmarks. So my whole idea is that we should try and see, can we, like anywhere else, we try to reach those benchmarks. And same way, if those figures can be available, then we as group can try and see that why can't we also reach that kind of benchmark. Now the other question is that I have, that in today's scenario, of where we all are struggling with our profit and loss balance sheets that we look at, are becoming definitely more and more. I mean, I don't think that requires, or is anybody feels that, no, that the time is that we are having great profitability. Is anybody feels that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We are in difficult times.
In difficult times. So in these difficult times, how are you trying to retain, or how are you dealing with the manpower issues in your organizations? And especially, I would say, nursing. Is it that we have to compromise with numbers, or what is it that we have to do, or how do we really?
So if I can take that question first,
Yeah.
I think that's a huge, manpower is a huge challenge. Getting the right numbers is a huge challenge. And I also agree with what Dr. Ramnarayan started off with, that a lot of what we deliver in terms of outcomes is not just dependent on the machines which we have, it's also about having the right people. To address this challenge, I would think there are a couple of things. There's just not one way to do it. The couple of things is, one, I feel there is a need for us. We can't go down on below a certain numbers, especially on people who work by the bedside. This is a common mistake which we do. Every time we look at wanting to bring down our costs, the first numbers which get slashed are those who really work by the patient side, which directly affects the clinical outcome. So I said the numbers should probably not really be looked at in that sense. But a way to there has to be a rationality on the financial payouts and everything. But more importantly, I think it is about taking in people, giving them good training. Training and this thing helps you to keep them engaged with you. But I don't think we can really be able to get over the challenge of attrition. We will lose people. So if your systems are so robust that you are able to, you have your confidence in your training system to take people in at a junior level, train them and be able to put them by the bedside and be confident about what they will deliver, I think that works well, and it works like a shop floor system of people coming in, staying with you for some time and going out, and you have a strong mechanism and still deliver outcomes. I would also say that there is a great need for us to move on from having people based on standard fixed qualifications, like you have your minimum requirement as a a graduate and then the other qualifications. I would look for more skilled workers, for our own people to develop, for our own setups to develop skilled workers, say probably after a 10 standard, after a 12 standard, you develop them in the skills and put them in those areas to, clinical areas to work. Paramedical especially, I think makes a lot of difference as well. So a little bit of different thinking and a little bit of, and I also feel, I'm an administrator myself, but I also feel a lot of manpower cost goes into the administration of the hospital. So maybe we should, look at a little bit more compacting the administrative team rather than the clinical team. These are some of the areas where I feel we can work on manpower costs.
I think she has answered quite a bit. Maybe Dr. Chatterjee if you want to supplement.
So there are
that.
two areas I'd like to define it now as the iteration amongst nurses as well as doctors, and I would not take it very far to the technicians. But as far as nurses are concerned, there's a regular iteration, because every time a hospital opens up in the Middle East, you have a problem. So, it's not only the Middle East now, there's Australia and there's so many other countries. But I think training is extremely important. And the philosophy that we follow in this hospital, in our hospital, is that we will train you so well that you will get that job and you will go. That is important. That's the strength. So today, I have a line of nurses who are wanting to join this hospital. I don't have to go to any agent or anyone. This is because if you don't get that job, then it is my problem. I let you down. So therefore, I don't want to let you down, so I will train you so well that you will get that job. Now that gives them the confidence that we should join this organization because they train us for better. Then there is the next phase of nurses, which you have to very judiciously choose. The nurses who have done their tour of duty, they have been to the Middle East and come back, and their families are well settled, that's the nurse to pick. She's not going to leave you. Then the other thing comes as far as your staff is concerned, as far as the doctors are there. Well, the doctors, initially when they start off and they start doing well, there are some cultures, possibly in North India, when they shift our block. But today, I'm exploring the possibility. I'm a great believer in full-timers, but I'm exploring the possibility of group practice. So we had a lot of doctors come across from Ahmedabad and explain to us the concept of group practice, which we didn't understand this too well. And then I was shocked. In Hyderabad, there are 175 anesthesiologists who do group practice. And now this controls the amount of spend that you have to do. It is per case, certainly. But the point is, there is regular service. So therefore, your quality is not coming down in any way. Now, what happens to those doctors who practice group practice? They get 2 weeks off, fully paid, in the month of May and in the month of December. All of them are getting holidays. They are very happy. So therefore, when there was a liver transplant, which we were walking the talk with, we actually got these doctors from Hyderabad to come and explain to us, how does this work? And they said that you don't have to worry about anything. So therefore, there are new business models which we have to think of in difficult times, and we should try and change as fast as we can if the pressure on us is too much to really produce results. So if we are going to do that, we should keep an open mind and think of various new business models, which would help you to contain your cost and at the same time deliver what you wanted to do. So one of the aspects of group practice, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much of time, sir, but just give me a minute, is that there is a pivot. That pivot might earn something, but gradually the pie becomes so big that he attracts other people. His share, percentage-wise, becomes smaller, and the others have percentage-wise a little larger share, because in the early days, he's already had his share of the pie. So you see, when he starts bringing in new people, they get more excited and they draw in more clients. So therefore, we should start thinking of these business models. If it is so successful in Ahmedabad, it's so successful in Hyderabad, we should also be looking at it. I don't even know, sir, if it is in Delhi, if it is working. But in Delhi, we have the culture that we go a block. So if one boss goes, साहब की फोन आई है, हम सब जा रहे हैं. जाओ यार, मगर हमारी क्या, तो भाड़ में जाए, वो तो साहब हैं, वो हमारे साहब हैं. So I think these sort of things might hit us in the future. So I'd like to share this with Ram.
Thank you. I think Narayani covered the aspect of nurses and Sujit has talked about physicians. Now, when you typically look at the models which evolved in the United States, there was pressure on reimbursements and there was extreme pressure on the bottom line. And this is an area where I believe, in fact, Dr. Gyani and I have talked about this a lot, that can we get in people who are practicing at the top of their license, not at the bottom of their license? This is an area which they worked on in the United States. I am referring to the concept of physician assistants. You see, typically for a nurse, there is career growth. She moves outside. Physician assistants, if they come in, one is you have a person at an appropriate qualification practicing at the top of his license. And I remember my residency days, if you're an MCH, you're practicing at the bottom of your license for 5 years at a very, very high cost. And this model was created over there to deal with this issue of cost of manpower. It is something we believe should evolve in this country, but obviously there is resistance from certain councils. But this has happened in my specialty, in cardiac surgery. It is happening in neurosurgery. It has happened in certain specialties. This definitely will help you to deliver your quality, at the same time bring down your cost, because currently, that's why they called physician assistants. This is an area, besides the nursing and the physician models, which you could work on to bring down the cost of your manpower, at the same time deliver quality. And trained nurses also actually many a time are practicing at the bottom of their license, not at the top of their license. So we need to address this also. They're doing so many tasks which really a nurse should not be doing. And there are very low-cost people available to do what they do. Not at the bedside, though, the other work.
So thank you. I think you all have in totality tried to address as to in today's difficult times, how can we try to address some of these HR issues? And I think one of our last talk by the iconic, the Dabbawalas, was really an eye-opener where they are trying to use, again, the model where the uneducated people were being trained to deliver the highest quality delivery. So, and which is what all of us are also referring to, that sometimes we may have to resort to this kind of a training. And second, what he talked about was motivation. And motivation was also, again, responsible for delivering. And third, what Dr. Sujit Chatterjee is talking about, let's say, innovations in the whole business model or the looking at the alternatives to handle this. So I think with this only, I would say the last question which I'd like to ask and then conclude is that we all understand, sir, that today more than 50% of the work has started to come from the government schemes. And as things go further, more and more work may come through the government schemes. So far, whatever studies have happened, there is a study which was done, pioneered by Dr. Alexander Thomas here in Karnataka. We are also all a part of it, which shows that the hospitals were getting less than 50% of the cost of the procedure. Under that kind of a circumstance, how should or what are you trying to do to, I would say, meet this as an emerging challenge?
So, in the Constitution of India, it is also mentioned that health is a right, and it is directly the responsibility of the government. It is not my responsibility. If I am a private player, I am going to make profit. Profit is not a bad word. It is to be there. Today, you have different industries where people like lawyers charge whatever they feel like. Why are we in the medical fraternity afraid of saying that I will charge you top dollar because I'm delivering you top of the line healthcare? Now, yes, there is the underprivileged. We had a TV anchor screaming at the top of his voice, look beyond something. Sir, if we are to look beyond something, how are we going to make our organization survive? Here, today, the point of care is changing from 1.5 Tesla MRI to a 3 Tesla MRI. That is the point of care. So there are doctors who are trained. So therefore, if it's going to be thrust upon me, then I think that the healthcare system in this country will crack. So therefore, we will break ourselves if we think in terms of doing the government's bidding. It might be the political or the election season, but I'm not going to be politically correct. I'm going to say my piece, and it is profit. I don't say that I will profiteer, but I will profit. Otherwise, how am I going to drive my hospital to the cutting edge of technology and deliver what there is an expectation of me? No, sir, I beg to disagree. Government cannot thrust their inefficiencies upon me. I am not going to take that responsibility.
So what do you do today? I am saying it is being thrust. I mean, the issue is not that...
I will not accept it, sir. I have not accepted CGHS. I have not accepted ECHS. For the ECHS payment, I had to go to the President of India to get my money to the President of India. I have letters, and I have told the President, Srimati Pratibha, that, Madam, you are the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. There is a 50 lakh owing to me for a period of 3 years.
So,
should I tolerate it? I will not.
So, sir, I am getting a very clear message from you that, number one, at the present kind of rates, this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable, and that is why you have not accepted it. So that's very clear message from you. Dr. Ramnaran?
We are, with Sujit, we have not accepted any of these schemes. But answering your question specifically, if you do want to align with the schemes at any point in time, or you are forced to align with the scheme, the question is, what will you do? And clearly there, we have started tweaking our business models. Trying to fit the scheme into your existing hospital is trying to, fit a square peg into a round hole. That may not work. But what we were talking about earlier, the CAPEX, this is where probably the problem is it came overnight. If it comes in a phased manner and say that you have to do this at this cost, this is where the CAPEX piece comes. You may look at creating facilities or creating segments, or whichever way you look. We have done this in tier 2 towns in Akola and Gondia in cancer centers. The entire business model is different. The CAPEX is different in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technology. The problem is aligning the current facilities to those prices is, like Sujit said, it's not going to work. But if we have to go ahead, we may have to tweak business models. You see, business models were tweaked all over the world. At some point in time, we may have to, I do not know. At that point in time, this is the only way to begin bottom up and create it. The problem is implementing it overnight is a huge challenge. That could be an issue. But if you're given the time, and if we have to, we may have to evolve and create models. Business models have to evolve. Business models have to metamorphose.
So definitely the kind of hospitals we run, we can't take up this work. We will run ourselves into the ground. And so Dr. Chatterjee expressed the sentiment strongly. And I think that's the sentiment all of us have a resonance with, whether we express it as strongly or not. However, will this government channel business, will it go away? It's not going to go away. It's here to stay. So yes, it can. Probably there is a way to do it in the right facilities, in the right places, like you mentioned. But I also feel more importantly, it's not going to stay the way it is. It will get calibrated with so many people speaking to the government, so many people taking up this issue about the way the costing is. It is my view that somewhere there will be some calibration upwards by the government as well over a period of time in terms of getting into more appropriate costing, which may not be the private sector costing, but more appropriate costing. And also we will be able to find the right facilities, and there would be some measures. I strongly feel that one of the things which needs to happen and which people need to talk about is, if we want to do this government channel work, is having an official way to bring down cost with the way we use consumables. Abroad, there are consumable reuses which happen with a definite protocol. Today in this country, we don't even talk about it. Some of all of that will also come into place. So there will be a place where that kind of work will also be done. Will it be the private hospitals? I think not. Will it be at the current rates only? I think not. I think there will be some kind of iteration and changes which will happen, and it will recalibrate into a new normal where this work will happen and it will find its place to do it.
So thank
So
you.
may I just add, sir, if you work below your cost, do not think the numbers will minimize your cost. When you work at loss and the numbers increase, your losses increase. So therefore, if the government is going to ensure that these are thrust upon you, then that is not democracy. There has to be a rationale that this is my responsibility. The public sector undertaking is doing a fantastic job. Why not strengthen the public sector? The KEM hospitals, the All India institutes are already done. But the science, the JJs, why not strengthen them, increase the bed capacity, etc., so that the government can invest?
So thank you, sir. I think I would like to naturally help to conclude, but what we are just trying to we have listened to this, that at the present infrastructure, at the present price times, this is not a sustainable thing. So when we are talking about tweaking, my only worry is that that calibration should not happen to compromise patient safety. Now that's the big issue, that I would like Secretary General's presence here to kind of take it to the concerned authorities that the rates must be made appropriate, at least to see that the patient safety is not compromised. So with that, I would like to conclude this session. Thank you very much, and it has been helpful, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson.